Trauma Thursdays. Hello, I'm Dr. Alana, trauma psychiatrist. Welcome to Trauma Thursdays. I don't know if you guys saw, but we had some technical difficulties. Bloopers. It's all good though. It's my show, and that's why I did it like this, so that I don't have to worry so much about being on somebody else's clock. So anyway, I hope that you still have time to talk. I'm here to discuss trauma. Welcome to Trauma Thursdays. This is the second season. This is the first episode of the second season. Yay! And I was tired of talking to myself, so I decided to invite some friends to really be able to show you all what it looks like to do empathy skills practice in very real time. So I'm going to let my guest introduce herself. Can you please tell my audience a little bit about yourself?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm very honored to be on the first episode of
First
this season. So thank you for that. My name is Keva, Horry, and I am the founder and executive director of the Horry Foundation. I created this foundation in honor of my daughter who passed away actually. It's almost 10 years. But anyway, she had a very rare chromosome abnormality and caused 1p36 deletion syndrome. And for her, it caused a lot of respiratory issues, and that's ultimately what she succumbed to and passed away of. So, yeah.
Thank you for talking about her. Thank you for telling your story.
Thank you.
So, I was drawn to you in part through mutual friends.
Right.
But we were drawn together because you are speaking and really sharing your story. You've written a whole book.
Yeah.
What is this? Tell me about it.
It's called Glamour and Sacrifice, Life in the Shadow of Championships. As many people know, I was married to a professional NBA player, and we had our first child, our daughter, who was born with this abnormality, and it was very, very challenging, not only with her care, but taxing on marriage, several friendships, so it was very traumatizing, devastating to learn at 23 years old that I'm not going to have this perfect child to bring home. So that in and of itself was the start to this long journey of uncertainties, but a journey that was rewarding in many, many ways. And so that is my mission now. I go around the world. That is honestly the mission of the foundation, to bring awareness to this rare chromosome abnormality. And there are several people out there who either have gone misdiagnosed or totally undiagnosed, because Ashland symptoms mimicked MS.
Multiple sclerosis.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I spent, the first 14 years of her life, really, I refer to it as a science project, and I don't mean that in any disrespectful way, but every day was different. There were no 2 days the same, and I learned so much along the way. But one day, got a letter in the mail from Baylor University of Medicine, and they stated her formal diagnosis, and everything in that letter, I was like, they could have asked me. I could have told them all of this, because that was my study case, or my case study. And I was just blessed with 17 years, because the doctors didn't believe she would live beyond infancy. So I'm very happy, although I miss her every single day, but her life just brought so much joy to me, and in many ways, and taught me so many lessons, more than I could have ever taught her as a mother.
Sure.
Yeah.
Wow, what an amazing story. And I think what I didn't know a lot of that, so I'll I would tell you that I did not even know the whole story. I just knew bits and pieces of it. So thank you for sharing it. But the reason that it resonates so much with me is that you turn your trauma into triumph.
Yes.
And that parallels so many things that brought me to this space of even attempting to bring trauma healing and trauma information to you. So thank you for sharing your story. And I have more questions, of course. Sure. But I want to tell you a little bit more about my story as well, so that you can understand how I got here. Mm-hmm. Because through a very similar process, I was just living my life as a psychiatrist, you know, doing what I thought was good trauma care, working at the VA, taking care of veterans with PTSD and all types of conditions that normally we would say depression, anxiety, substance problems, because when you're dealing with a lot of trauma, you know, we tend to self-medicate. Right. And when I say we, I say we all. We. Yeah, come on, point to yourself too. So I began this process of really looking at and studying what was going on with people. Mm-hmm. You know, I recognized when the veterans were telling me how they were thinking, I recognized trauma in their thought processes, but then I also started to see it in my friends and in my family and in my colleagues and in the last place that I looked. Like, how can I have missed this? That I too share these traumas. So it really took a lot of self-study. Can you grab that for me? I have a house phone now. That's right. It's right there in the corner. But it's not good. Don't get up. Anyway, so the bottom line was that even in dealing with trauma myself and trying to help other people go through it, I started to apply some of the things that I learned in really on my journey. Mm-hmm. It wasn't in textbooks. Mm-hmm. It was through experiences that I started to learn the reticular activating system, the amygdala, the mirror neurons. And I'd heard about all those things in the textbooks, but it really is a difference to live it and think about what do these things actually really do to how we experience life. So as I started to understand those brain systems and really think about like, what does your mind do when you've experienced traumas and how much it programs our responses, right? I was on a radio show yesterday. Shouts out to 102.5 FM. Amanda Sabb and Grossman, the comedian. We were talking about how much people spend time thinking about their past. Like if you had to put a percentage on it, how much time do you think you spend thinking about past stuff?
Oh my gosh.
Out of 100%, how much time do you think you spend about the past?
Honestly, I would have to say at least 80%.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. How much time do you think you spend worrying about the future? How much percentage of time do you think that would be?
Another 80%.
Nobody's math ever adds up. My math doesn't add up either. I'm like, exactly. And I would probably break down those statistics very similar. It's a very common thing that we do.
Consuming.
To be consumed by a past that we can't do shit about.
Right.
And worried about a future that we still have yet to create. That future doesn't even exist.
Absolutely.
But the time that we have the best control of ourselves is the now. And when our minds are so split into past and into future, that when you're looking at whatever situation you're approaching, you have to have the awareness that all of those things are informing the way that you're looking at the situation now.
But don't you feel like it's information that's feeding the future though? Mm-hmm. As much as you're trying to get away from it, learn from it, and do differently, you're still so focused on not repeating
what you don't want
what
to
you
create.
don't want to create.
Right.
Again.
Right. So when I explain to people that our thoughts are creative, that's a great example of how you can think so much about what you don't want that you can create it. Because our mind doesn't register things in the negative. So I have a skill that I tell people called mind knots, and that's KNOTS, mind knots. And so what mind knots are is that when we think about things, or even when we talk and communicate, we tell people what we don't want them to do. Don't hurt yourself. Don't lie to me. Don't fail this test, right? So you may even tell yourself, like, don't eat that food. But your brain doesn't register the not. And so when we're talking to each other and we're still in that, like, in trauma mode, I call it, we give a lot of mental and verbal and action energy to precisely what we don't want to create. And the more that we do that, the more that we're likely to repeat the trauma cycles that, I don't want my relationship to go bad. But when you're looking at things and you have that negative filter on things, your mind highlights those places where, it's going bad, it's going bad.
So what are some of the exercises that we can do to loosen those knots?
Sure. Well, the first thing you gotta do is know that it's happening. So, listening for when you say something in the negative that could be delivered with a different spin. Okay. So, an example. I'll give you an example from my own life. My 8-year-old child and I struggle when it comes to school and when it comes to keeping him organized and getting his stuff turned in and making sure that things come home from school. And to be honest,
he's a boy.
He is a
He's a boy. I went through that same challenge.
I broke out in a sweat just thinking about it.
They do things a little differently.
Child.
It'll get better.
But thank you. Thank you for blessing my soul with that.
It'll get better.
Anyway, I spoke to him in a mind knot, and I'm just even realizing it as I'm thinking about it right now, that I told him, don't forget your notebook, right? And so hearing that now, I would say to him, remember your notebook. Remember to put your notebook in your bag before you leave school today. At the end of the day, son, check through what you need to do and like verbally give him a skill set that paints the picture for him of what to do so that hopefully as he gets toward the end of his day, he could stop, think about what mom said in a way that's more engaged with your prefrontal cortex. So it's like when you're using mind knots, you're speaking to that primitive part of us that fears something happening and tries to prevent it.
Interesting. Okay.
So it's listening to yourself and listening to your thinking and listening to what you're expressing and verbalizing and catching those mind knots and reeling them in and then just reformatting them in a space where, there are times where I'll hear myself say something and be like, whoop, reel it back in, like, I used a mind knot, let me restate that in a way that's more likely to be effective. Son, I beg of thee, please remember to go through your checklist. See, I'm gonna have him write down a checklist. See, so I think that's a good example of like when we're in our autopilot mode, our natural state is things come out from that biological, fearful, habitual space. And changing your mental thinking and changing your, that's the reason why I call my program Empathy Skills Practice. So have you heard about my program? Or told you about it?
I've heard about your program.
Okay.
I missed the event you had.
Okay.
But trust me, I will be at the next one.
It's okay.
Take my pen and paper.
It's all good. It's all good. So just to let you all know, I'm having a live event called the Trauma Cure. CURE stands for Creators Using Radical Empathy. And it is helping you understand how your biology creates your psychology. So if you're in Houston, Texas, or if you're coming to Houston, Texas, or if you're anywhere near Houston, Texas, you want to be in the building at the Magnolia Hotel on October 26th 8:30 to 5:30, I'm gonna feed you, I'm gonna inform you, and I'm gonna free you from your traumas if you'll let me. If you'll let me. Because the challenge for most people is that we've been used to thinking like this for so long. We don't want to let it go.
We don't want to let it go. We do, but we don't. Or can't.
What do you think that's about?
We get comfortable with the dysfunction and don't know any other way as of yet.
As of yet. I got something for him. That's why it's called skills over pills. Somebody's like, is this natural? Is this sort of like, I'm not going to touch you. I'm not writing a prescription. And I ain't
cannabis oil.
And no cannabis allowed, although we can talk about it later, you know what I mean? But listen, what I really want to give to people is that this is not about, I think we have to acknowledge our traumas in order to know how they're affecting us. And then we take that knowledge and we go looking for, like, how am I creating what I don't want by how I'm conducting myself and how I am interacting with other people, and keeping awareness of the invisible stuff. We have an invisible self. First of all, you got this body, and that's good that you know that you have that. But we have parts of ourselves that we're not giving attention to. Your psyche. Psyche is Latin for spirit. And we're all spiritual beings having a spiritual experience in the physical
body.
Absolutely. We forget about that. Most of the time it's really interesting to me now that I see the world differently, and I see how powerful every person is, and really how divine every person is, their stories and what they can do and create in the world. It inspires me to talk to people and help them, do what you're doing, which is just fueling, so much good for other people in the world. And that's empathy, like you really got in that space where you experience like what it's like to be in the trenches with something that science doesn't understand and no one can explain, and you're going through that every day. And I can see, I don't even want to, I feel like I'm about to make you cry. I got tissues now.
Well, and I love the way you put that, in the trenches, because I really was. My ex-husband and I lived apart for most of our marriage, and we kept home base here in Houston. And the kids and I, when Ashlyn was well enough, we would go visit wherever he was, months at a time. But it really was a life or death decision that we had to make concerning that. So that wasn't the only reason the marriage dissolved, but it did play a part. But I want to talk about, because I'm certain that you have viewers that have dealt with multiple traumas at one time. So I was dealing not only with my daughter, but then the death of my father in 2006. Then the brink of divorce. It was coming.
Divorce is a trauma. Absolutely.
A downward spiral. And divorce did come in 2010, so it's been 10 years. 2009, I'm sorry. And then my daughter died a year later, to the month of June of 2011. So it was like a 1, 2, 3
you were just getting hit left and right.
And it's like I went through the divorce one way and came out totally different. And what I mean by that was just not only the experience of the trauma and the emotional changes, but body changes. Like going through perimenopause, and I still don't know my body. And trying to get to know me again. But healing and doing the work that it takes to heal emotionally and spiritually. I'm still trying to figure out the physical part. So my doctors and
Let me know when you figure it out, sis. Let me know when you figure it out.
I started dealing with stuff, but I'm happy in the sense that I have done the work. I'm still doing the work, and you're gonna help me continue to do the work.
I'll help you. And that's it's a beautiful thing. I think when we can acknowledge and talk about all the painful things that we've been through in a safe space.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
And I think that what my answer to what do I tell people who are getting batted about left and right by so many things, because that is truly once I understood how many things could cause trauma, right? Because even for me, I was taught the bar was way up here, and you know, I basically literally would talk to people, and there were some people that they would have a certain type of trauma that wasn't qualifying as a trauma based on the textbooks and what the experts had said is trauma, right? So you know you don't hit the bar, but this person is telling me that this hurt, and I'm not over it, and it's damaging, and after it I'm not the same. I don't trust people as much. I don't feel the same joy that I felt before. I'm consumed by whatever those experiences. I'm stuck, and I would say that how you think about anything creates how you experience it.
Absolutely.
And we've learned to equate painful things with with traumas. I don't like it. It's bad. We put a bad label on those things, and depending on how strongly you feel about those things being bad, that's how you experience it when you think about it, when you remember it, when you process it in the now, and you think about those past things. You're not thinking about the death of your father, like, you think about it and it's like, you know, that same situation can be dissected differently in terms of how you look at that experience and how it shapes and forms you, right? And so I give people tools to help them sort through each one of those situations and decide what they're going to tell themselves it means about their life, and what are they going to tell themselves that it means about the other person, and what it means about the world, because we carry a lot of baggage that is optional to carry.
That's true.
Bag lady,
so
you gonna miss your bus.
That's so true.
So, you know, I think that the important thing that I want to teach people is when you're operating in the now, you choose whether or not those things are going to define your life and your life story and how painful those things are going to be. But it takes mental push-ups. It takes it takes work.
It does.
Emotional work is
for
hard.
me, I'm very faith-based. My faith is very strong, and not only does it take those emotional muscles, it also takes those faith muscles too. And I don't know where I would be without my faith. And I don't know any different other than to fall back on. Not even fall back on, to rely on. That's been my existence.
Yes.
That has been
Handed
the
here.
provider of my existence.
Sure.
And a lot of times that's just not enough for people. Just have faith, and that's the last thing you want to hear, cliches or sayings that appear to be cliches when you're going through. And I need some substance. I need to know how to really get through this. And for me, a lot of the things, like you were saying, is how you look at it. It's going to carry you. It's going to determine how you're carried through the rest of your life. But when you don't learn the lessons and you try to hurry and rush through those experiences, guess what? They're coming again.
Yeah, they're coming back because you gonna catch that L again.
Yeah,
Because you haven't fully processed that lesson. So I think that's a great place to stop, and a great place to marinate on that. Your losses can or things that you call and label as losses really can be lessons, really can be a powerful lift to your levels and the next place that you want to go. But one of the things that grates me to my core is when I hear people say stuff like that she was assaulted, her life is ruined, or they lost their baby, their marriage, their relationship is gonna be forever ruined, because that's a generalization. That is a high level assumption. And it's possible, right?
Not just assumptions, but judgments too.
Yeah, the judgment is in there.
And usually those judgments come from people who haven't experienced or walked in those shoes.
Exactly. And exactly. That's where using empathy and really connecting to everyone is capable of anything that they believe that they can do. If they're physically capable of doing it, if it's just a mental barrier, it takes practice. There's no limitation. Once we put mental effort, concentration, and continued focus on creating something mentally, there is no barrier. So when I hear people say I can't, I'm like, you're right. You cannot yet. You are unable to yet. Doesn't mean that you can't learn how, but it means that you have to do some serious work on your mental and your thoughts and what those are creating for you. So thank you for your time today. Thank you for joining in for Trauma Thursdays. I'm Dr. Lana, trauma psychiatrist. Please follow, like, share the Facebook page. I'm on IG, Instagram. I'm on YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter. Y'all, listen, I understand now how my parents used to feel with this new technology. I'm like, what is this? I'm calling my daughter like, help me. So anyway, I hope this helps somebody. I hope this helps you all. We'll be back next week for Trauma Thursdays at noon. Eat your lunch. Get your nails done. Do something for yourself today. Self-love, self-care. Show the book one more time.
Book Glamorous Sacrifice, Life in the Shadow of Championships by Keva Horry. That's Horry on Amazon.com.
And Keva, where can they find you?
On Facebook, I'm Keva Devell Horry, Horry. On Instagram, I'm KD Horry, and Twitter, KID Horry.
And Twitter. Okay. And thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for sharing your story. This has been wonderful. dralana.com. I'm going to spell it for you. Don't forget the U. DRALAUNA. There's a little bit of you in me. Go on dralana.com. Check out what we have going on. Join me on October 26th on thetraumacure.eventbrite.com. Come on now. It's $97, y'all. $97. I'm going to give you the game for I'm offended if you think that's expensive. I gave you a discount. And there's a military discount too, so share with your veterans as well. We're going to learn about trauma. We're going to get well. I love you. Goodbye.
Bye. Thanks, girl.